Hi, I'm Dr. Kimberly Moore, host of the Envision More Workforce Insight podcast. Join us as we explore workforce and leadership through an innovation lens with leaders from across the country in every industry. Whether you're in education trying to crack the code for workforce or industry seeking to address your workforce talent strategy, or maybe you just need to be inspired, we've got you covered. Tune in, save us as a favorite, and let's innovate together. I'm so excited today to start the whole Workforce Insight podcast, and I am joined by an amazing leader. I promise you, listeners, this will be a treat that you do not want to miss. You'll actually want to replay it over and over. He is just that amazing. So who am I talking about? It is the Travis Jordan that's joined me, and I will tell you, when you think about marketing and communication, and just that whole space of getting the word out, telling the stories, there is no one that can do it better. And I mean this. This is across the country. So Travis, so glad to have you here. Thank you. And if you don't mind, because I know lots about you, but we want everybody else to get a quick snapshot of who you are, and then we'll jump into the interview.
Absolutely. Thanks, Kim. And thanks for setting the bar so high on this interview for me. So I have a lot to live up to, especially on the repeat mode. But yeah, I'm Travis Jordan, most recently serving as Chief Communications and Marketing Officer at Western Carolina University. It's a UNC systems school about 45 minutes west of Asheville. You've probably never heard of the town, but it's a fantastic institution. I've been there for about 3 years. Prior to that, I spent about 12 years in the state of Florida, really traversing the state from South Florida to Tallahassee and all points in between. Experience in the state university system, the state college system, the Department of Education, and economic development. So really a trifecta of experiences of strategy, research, campaign launches, brand efforts, and more. So happy to be here with you, Kim, and so good to see you again after so many years.
Same here. It's like virtual hug, definitely sending that to you. And again, just for the listeners, the level of experience that Travis brings in such in a key area, because Workforce Insight, it does take into account, different industries, whether it's education, workforce, whether it's government, nonprofits. But today we're focusing in on messaging with education, but I will tell you that it really is transferable into the other spaces that we'll be talking about. So to not delay it, because we want to make sure that our audience gets these major nuggets, Travis, there's been a whole lot going on with, just the changing dynamics in education and, communication and marketing leading the way. It's evolved, since the pandemic. So what are some of your thoughts on what the landscape is now?
It really has evolved. And when I first started higher education back in 2011, it was a much more simplified process looking back at it. And I think that what's really happened is, one, a shift in higher education in general. Students aren't necessarily looking for a traditional 4-year degree anymore. They're looking for options that can elevate, uplift themselves, reskill, upskill, go back into the workforce after they've already been away from school for several years. So I think that lots have changed. And I think that not only colleges, community colleges, but also universities have to look at ways to entice non-traditional students to come back to learn. And I think that what's really changed primarily for me in the workspace, especially coming from a state level and now at a university for the past 3 years at Western, is really audience segmentation. It's gotten much more targeted across the board, and you have to really be able to target your messages across that way in audience segmentation, meaning that you're talking to people who are online learners, they're coming back for a graduate program, they're coming back for rapid credentials or certifications. They're coming back from a transfer from a 2+2 program. There's lots of audiences that are out there. And I think that what we've really tried to own in on is the fact of how can we get our message out to those specific people, not only to reach them where they are, but also help spread the budget. Because as we know that budget resources are very limited a lot of times in higher education, and to be able to really micro-target these individuals across the board from digital or even traditional advertising is so important now. And I think you got to find them where they are at this point. So I think audience segmentation has been a really huge driver for that. And also storytelling. Before, I think it was a lot of individual colleges, universities, talking about rankings. We're the best MBA program in the country. Well, how many colleges say that across the country? a lot. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think the storytelling aspect, and Kim, you and I did this at Tallahassee Community College. We were ahead of the curve on that. When everyone else was talking about enroll now, we were telling stories of success of students in the workforce. And I think that's what's really changed, in my opinion, is the storytelling and segmentation aspect.
Such great points, because you're right. We had such a run there. When I think about our time there at TCC, Tallahassee Community College, and just the level of storytelling, the how we made sure that the person that was working three jobs and decided that they wanted to give education a try, and they did that, and they were all the better for that, that we made that the common household story, that everybody felt like they too
Yeah.
could get that second chance and kind of reimagine themselves. So you're right, storytelling
Yeah,
is critical.
absolutely. And Western Carolina University, I've always said it's kind of a hybrid of what reminds me of a community college and a four-year university because it's really rooted in community. And we also have had satellite campuses in Asheville who focus specifically on non-traditional students. So I think even with higher education, it's really about those interesting ways to connect with those people, work with your community partners, and get those individuals back into the classroom.
So key. So when you think, and you
Yeah.
touched on it, the adult learners. We hear that constantly now, that the growing demographic that we're seeing, and how do, because it's not just your
Right.
traditional anymore that you can target, waiting on those high schoolers to plan for that next step, because there's gap years and everything else that
Yeah.
it's happening. How have you, and has there been a special campaign, if you will, to attract the adult learner
Yeah, there's actually
audience?
been several, and I think that's just the nature of what we just spoke about. COVID changed a lot of things. And I think first and foremost, I think that primarily adult learners consume content differently, right? I think that, when you're thinking about a traditional student, 16, 17, 18-year-olds in the recruitment cycle, you're thinking digital first. You're thinking TikTok, Snapchat. How can I reach those high school students who are nearing graduation? But when adult learners, it's different, and you have to be more nimble and flexible in your marketing strategies with that, I think. And I think that for adult learners, there's still a place for traditional marketing. There's still a place for the billboards, the radio spots, the television, and specifically in my most recent institution in Western Carolina, where that was so rural, many of our students didn't even have access to internet. So that takes it up another level altogether. And I think that with that in mind, you have to be considerate of the fact that, 50-50 split, digital traditional, kind of makes sense in certain areas. And I think that for adult learners, you have to be where they are, whether that's based on their program of interest, their location, their geographic location. I think it's really got to be specific to what they're looking at as far as they're considering to come back to college, or maybe they're a single mother who's raising a child at home and they want to come back after 10, 15 years out of college. So all the messaging really has to come into play in those areas. And I think we have to be very consistent with that and use research to kind of back that method up, I believe.
So again, I shared with the listeners an amazing track record that you have in a variety of different spaces. What's your go-to strategy? Because for a lot of marketing officers and communication officers, there's such a dire need, and they're looking for that. Institutions are looking for that panacea, to fix it all. And so they would certainly, I mean, you would be sought after.
Yeah.
That's who you are. But what's your go-to strategy when you're going into a new institution, or maybe even organization, because you've seen it in a variety of different
Yeah, I think the
places?
go-to strategy is going to be dictated, one, by where you are, your institution, and two, by the programs you're trying to promote. What we've really found works very successfully is what we call first-party data. And this is really low-hanging fruit. These are students who have made a first step. They filled out a form, they've met someone at a recruitment event, they've made a first step, but they haven't enrolled, they haven't applied, they haven't signed up for a course yet. And with first party data, you're able to take that information, load it into your media plan, your media buys, serve up display ads, social media ads directly to those students who have already taken a first step. So what this does is basically, one, it is cost effective. So you're targeting
Right.
people who you know has somewhat of an interest in your institution. And two, you're getting to those students directly where they are, whether they're flipping through their social media feeds, whether they're walking down the road looking at their phone on CNN.com or FoxNews.com. You're hitting them up where they are in their journey and their path and reminding them that, hey, we're still here. That's one of my first go-to strategies, I think, and it's going to change for populations. You know, diverse populations, they're going to resonate with different types of images. And this could be something that we go
Yes.
to, and Western's another good example of this too. Being rural, Charlotte, North Carolina, was one of our biggest feeder schools across the state. So, in order to convince someone to come from Charlotte to what's called Cullowhee, North Carolina. Try to spell that one out.
Yeah.
So from Charlotte to Cullowhee, you have to be able to talk about the benefits for them to make the trek over the mountain to come over there. And a lot of times that meant really customizing messages, customizing imagery to really fit with your geographic location. So if you're going to target someone in Charlotte, they want to see people like themselves, and that's all in all transparency and all honesty. And we have to be authentic about that. So we want to showcase stories of students who have made that trek over, who have been successful in the transition. The same with first gen students. They're coming back, or they're coming for the first time in their family, potentially. And they could be a little hesitant or a little weary about coming over, trying that out for the first time. And I think from the messaging standpoint, they want to hear from people who have succeeded. They want to know what you've been successful at your institution. They want to know the services available to them to help ease that transition. So all of those come into play when you're thinking about the messaging strategy from start to finish, I think.
So I think the critical piece that you keep honing in on, and I think it's just absolutely important, is the personalized
Yeah,
messaging. Um, People want to be able to identify with.
that's
They
right.
want to know that you understand them, and there's no better voice than someone that's walking down that path right now in their
Yeah,
shoes. So
absolutely.
I think it's just a critical point.
Absolutely.
So you and I have experienced this together. This next question, and I know that institutions have to contend with this. They're in academia. You think about those who are the credit and degree seeking,
Yeah,
and then there's those workforce people that have lots of
right.
ideas and realize that what, we got to tailor that message because our audience is so
Hmm.
different. So the whole notion about prioritization
Yeah.
and being in your spot as a chief marketing officer, talk to me about your insight there and how you have been successful at, balancing the resources and the agendas and conversations that happen within the offices and institutions about why are you promoting this over
Yeah, and
this?
that's always the first question. I think in higher ed, you have so many competing stakeholders across the institution. You have individuals who want to promote services, who want to promote specific programs, very specific programs. You have your colleges who want to identify themselves as a unique brand across the nation. And you have your university brand and all the other ones in between. And I think that, it's tough to go into a university and prioritize that from the get-go, but I think what we found to be successful over the past several years, and this goes back to my very first job at Broward College through the DOE and TCC and now Western, I think has been the fact that you got to start with research and stakeholder buy-in. Because one, that I found that, if you don't have that research to back up your justification or your reasoning to go in a certain direction, it's going to fail. And unless you
Right.
bring the stakeholders along with you in this journey, it's going to fail because they want to be able to have a voice in what's happening at their institutions. So what we found specifically, and this kind of traverses itself over the last several institutions, is start with research and data. You start with your perception studies, your competitive analysis, really define who you are as an institution, your personality.
Mm-hmm.
And those are going to be different for every institution, no matter where you are in the country. You're going to have a different audience, a different perspective of what someone thinks about you, and you may not know what they're thinking about you. Once you kind of gather that information and research, what we did typically is bring in the stakeholders in the next phase of that, showcase the research, get buy-in from them, get some brainstorming sessions rolling across the board on that, and hear what they think about the institution. So focus groups.
Yes.
And focus groups are everyone from the president to the board of trustees to faculty, staff, students, deans, program managers. We've done all of that. And what we've really found is that once they have the ability to give their voice in the process, it becomes a much easier sell down the road when you're ready to roll out a campaign. And I really think that, when you prioritize that, it has to be an umbrella approach. So as you're kind of defining who the university is, you have your university up here, You have your satellite
Yeah.
campuses, you have your colleges, your programs, and your services, but it all has to build from the university branding first and foremost. And everyone else has to have that cohesive, clear voice across the board as it kind of trickles down into each of their areas.
You can, and I'm certain the listeners will agree, and I hear it again. I have the pleasure of working with you, but it speaks to something that's really important in the roles that when we talk
Yeah,
about chief marketing officers or communication officers, the whole idea of inclusivity, that whole idea of engaging all. You have a wonderful knack of doing that, which is why, again, when I think about, and we're going to get to
yeah,
that one, so I certainly won't,
yeah,
speak to it right now, but because we had a run and we had an amazing campaign that we were able to launch, but it was because of just that special skill of being able to work across all of the different sections and departments and colleges to be able to
yeah,
bring that home and have it be a message that can be owned by an
yeah.
institution, though it may have originated in one area.
Right.
So I think, for those of you that are listening, chief marketing officers and presidents and others, this is an important message and trait that you want to make sure that you see and have, and that your leader possesses, because this is the thing that's going to bridge it. So let's talk about, we said, how do you make sure when you're prioritizing those limited resources? The next part of it is just measuring effectiveness, because, oftentimes that when there are budget cuts, folks start wondering, is communications that
That's right.
important? Do we really need to invest in all those ads? So, what's your strategy for being able to respond to leadership
Yeah,
about
I
that?
think ROI is one of the biggest questions, and a lot of times it's because of the misunderstanding, right? So a lot of times individuals may not understand what marketing does as a function. And I think a lot of the questions are, well, what are they doing over there in that office? Are they just playing on social media? So I think that that's a natural reaction, and I can't tell you how many times I've heard going into a new position, marketing's never reached out to us. Marketing's never come over and
Yeah,
talked about what they're working on or what they're doing. We just know sometimes they may miss a deadline here and there. And,
yeah,
and as you know, and as from our experience together at TCC, a lot of times marketing teams are really fighting with the fact that they're doing all the day-to-day tasks. They're getting tons of requests in daily. And then they're also responsible for the brand. They're working with the advancement offices, potentially athletics, admissions, all these different areas. And typically it's a small budget with a small staff. And when someone asks for ROI, the first thing you want to go to is obviously enrollment. But first, how do you get to the enrollment point? How do you connect those dots? And really, it starts at the very baseline. ROIs, it's measured in different ways at different stages, I think. And I think that when you're talking about a brand launch specifically, that's coming into a market that may not understand who the institution is. They may need to be re-educated about who the institution is. So I always kind of baseline ROI from a brand launch. It's truly awareness. It's truly awareness,
yeah.
getting your name out there once again, and letting the state or the region or the city or locality know who you are as an institution, what your mission and values are. And I think from there, that's essentially the very baseline number. So that's your reach, your impressions, your website clicks coming to your website. Those are the big numbers. Those are the ones that are fun
Yes,
to take into the board and
yes,
say, oh, we had 20 million impressions. That's great. And then you know what the next question is, right? It's, well, how many
yeah.
students have we enrolled? And
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. What's the math
that's
on
right.
how many? How does that impact our
Yeah,
enrollment?
so
Yeah.
I think once you have that first step of brand awareness, first of all, you have to kind of sell the idea and sell the fact that, you're measuring awareness right now. You want to get as many eyes on this campaign as you can. I think your second tier really goes down to your call to actions. That's where you're talking about getting people to register for specific programs. You're pitching very specific programs or colleges out to the market at this point, and these are really enrollment campaigns. So that really changes the ROI. That goes from more of a broad awareness impression standpoint to really more about tracking your website leads, your form fills, individuals getting more information about a program specifically. And then that way you're able to see, okay, well, we had an ad about a nursing program. They filled out a form,
Yes.
and now we see their name on an inquiry list, right? So now we're seeing
Yes.
progress being made. And Kim, I remember you and I, when we were doing TCC to work, we would look at programs. I think it was weekly or biweekly, and we
Yes.
would see the names we added to the list. We found some people who have come from this or this paid media site over here, and so that's kind of the next level, I think, of ROI reporting is you really want to see some action. You want to see people filling out forms, clicking on content, and then taking a first step, I think, in that way. And when it really gets down to the next level, that's really connecting with your admissions department. A lot of times, marketing holistically has said that, well, we're here to get them in the door, but admissions has to close that door. But one of my missions over the past 3 years is really connecting the dots between an ad to enrollment. And that's using the CRM systems. I mean, Slate is a very common CRM system across most institutions in the US right now. And, with their tools and with their dynamics of Slate, it gets much easier to really connect the dots between ad versus form fill versus who's actually enrolled in courses. And then that becomes your third tier, your highest level of ROI is to be able
Hmm.
to showcase, well, we had 150 people click on this ad and we had 75 actually enroll and track it through UTM
Yeah.
codes so they're able to see exactly, okay, this traffic came from paid social media or it came from paid display ads on Google. Or if you're using customized URLs on a billboard, even you're able to track that.
Yeah.
So I think there's so many tools these days. You have to be very specific in how you're connecting those dots. And I think that
Hmm.
your ROI is dictated in what stage you currently are in.
Such an important nugget. And I know that, again, our listeners will do rewind on that to
Yeah.
hear that because it's critical. You can be passionate about an initiative, but then there are the stakeholders that you do have to respond to. So knowing what the ROI and
Absolutely.
what you're going to be measuring is critical. So let's talk about, one of those successful campaigns. And I say one, you've had a bazillion successful campaigns or initiatives. And I want to make sure because I know, listeners are thinking we're going to probably stay down the road of degrees or, but I'd like to talk about workforce development because that's the hottest ticket
Yeah.
around and how an institution can message and move the needle in that area is critical right now. So share an initiative that comes to mind and really how your team executed and what was some of the key ingredients for the success.
Yeah, there's three specific ones. It's really hard to stick to one.
Well,
Yeah,
you go ahead and
I
share the
I
three
want to
then.
start with TCC to work because that really is one thing that really kind of set me on a different type of career path, honestly. And I think that when we did that together, Kim, we were ahead of the curve. This was before COVID, and we were talking about the
Yeah.
rapid credentials, the certifications, and I want to say that we had to put this together in about 4 to 6 weeks. It was a really quick.
4 to 6 weeks on that one. And if you talk about the other one, it was 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So for Be
That's right.
Essential.
The Essential was a 2 week turnaround. And I think the ingredients that went into that was really closely working with our institutional effectiveness office, learning about historical enrollment data first and foremost. We identified the programs. We wanted to see who's enrolled in the programs in the past, where they came from, who they were, their age ranges, their geographic locations. And then we really had to build out a quick strategy based on that. And that really built into a content strategy of sorts. So, a content strategy that really connected the dots of written pieces for press releases. That press release became the photo gallery. That photo gallery became the video of the person in the story, and those assets then became the ads that went out to market. So, from looking at it from that way, it was really building it out from the ground up, very audience segmentation, way ahead of its curve. And I think that putting all those ingredients together, and this was done internally, which is a really cool thing about it.
Yes.
Our internal team did this, and our designers, our video photographers worked on this together. And we really were able to create a content funnel that was really sophisticated in nature that we rolled out 52 programs in 52 weeks. and
It
it
sounds
does.
crazy now, but we really were, and I would say even to this point, are with the
Yeah.
mindset ahead of the
Yeah,
curve
absolutely.
of what is possible because we believe and we believe then that it was
That's right.
possible and that we could tell those stories and it did
Yeah,
happen.
and
Yeah.
with that, and just for the listeners here, when you talk about 52 programs in 52 weeks, we had a great schedule in place. I want to say Monday morning, a press release would hit the presses. Our ads would drop on social media that afternoon. During the 2 to 3 week run of the campaign specifically, you would see the ads on television, hear them on radio, and every Monday a new program would launch while the others kind of saturated in the market for an extra few weeks. And it really created a presence in Tallahassee that was honestly unheard of, I think, in the state, if not the nation.
I had a
Yeah.
hard time because I know there were numerous
Yeah.
awards that your team and the college
That's right. There
received.
was numerous awards, and that went from the pieces that were created, from the design to the video photography to all the collateral we had created, the giveaways, the license plate frames, the little stress trucks that matched up with the trucking programs, and we had all kinds of pieces that really built together. And honestly, that campaign that we worked on really formed how I've handled things since then. I mean, I've
Oh
talked about
wow.
it so many times, and everywhere I've gone since then, I've really followed that format of content creation, content strategy. And leaving there, went over to the Department of Education where we did the Get There Florida campaign. And again, they were behind in the times at that point because we'd already done
Yeah.
it. And so went down the street in Tallahassee to do that on a statewide level, and used a very similar process of the storytelling, building out toolkits for all of our partners across the state from tech colleges and community colleges, and really supplying them with content, and then really pushing that storytelling aspect, and then connecting them with their college of choice across the state. And then coming up to Western, again, the same thing. We really looked at it from that standpoint of how can we really take this same approach, build in this content strategy, and use a storytelling as a baseline. And the same thing I did up there. I took a singular, fantastic student story. That person became the video, it became the billboard, it became the radio spot. And that way, it's the
Yeah.
familiarity you're building up. You're driving down the road, you see this person on the billboard with a QR code or a link. You read more about their
Yes.
story, you see the longer form video, you're enticed to learn more about the program. And it's like this content funnel that makes one, it's more efficient for our workflow. So, our team
Yeah.
can go in, capture one day of interviews with this student, and you're getting the pictures, the video, the written piece, and then from there it turns into the design assets and the media plan. And we had so much success at Western from this whole aspect. Our campaign was called Live Western, and Live
Uh huh.
Western was truly about someone living Western. Like, you could ask someone, what does it mean to live Western? It could be something as simple as, 20 years ago I was at a tailgate party at a football game, or it could be the
Yeah.
first in your family to go to college. And I pulling out those nuggets of personalization was so important, and it was really rooted from our work at TCC, because that's what people are resonating to the most, I think, right now, is hearing authentic stories. And we
Yes.
really changed the status quo and took a layered content approach. So it's no longer about the formal talking head style interview videos. That's great for a
Yeah.
certain audience, but what else can we do? And with this campaign, we took it a step further. So we started doing day in the lives, which is truly how you live Western. So we gave a student a camera, which may scare some listeners.
I
Yeah.
love that
Yeah.
so.
It's a true day in the life. So we would identify students across the campus, across the university, and these were very diverse students. It could be from the band, from athletics or football team, from programs specifically. They would take this out and film themselves for a week, just doing things around the campus. It could be going to lunch with their friends. It could be sitting in
Yeah.
class. It could be doing band practice, and it could be tubing down the river, just different things that really what it means to live Western, because it's a very specific location. And we would get that content back. Obviously, we would vet it. Sometimes,
Yeah.
sometimes you get some crazy stuff back, but we got some incredible stories back, and those became our heart and soul of our campaign. We were able to take that student created content, make that into a 30-second spot for television, make that into a, yeah.
Yeah. Oh my
And
gosh.
and it was, no money out to produce the video, but it was good enough in today's times, because I think that audiences are so used to the TikTok style, the authentic people holding the camera up, filming themselves.
Yeah.
It became our most successful videos. And I'm just thinking of numbers off the top of my head on TikTok specifically, and I know some states have banned TikTok, which is which is really disheartening because it's been our most successful tool that we've used ever. And our one video of a student doing that had over 5 million impressions. Million,
Oh my
million.
gosh.
And this was a very low cost to put out there. I think we spent maybe $1,800. So you're getting the traffic from the paid part, but it's also becoming viral in its own way. And I want to say that it sent over 27,000 people to the website. I mean,
Oh
it's
my
incredible.
gosh.
Yeah.
OMG. I mean, that's one of those moments that, again, for the listeners who may be thinking that you got to put a
Yeah,
ton of dollars out there to see the results. Here's a whole strategy of focusing in on your important customer,
that's
the
right.
student, and using them to tell
Let
the
them tell
story.
their story because they're going to tell it in the way that's going to resonate with other students. And what you get back is the fact that you're getting all this organic raw footage about them doing things around campus, extracurricular activities, things of that nature. But they're also talking about the program that they're in. So you're subliminally
Yeah.
promoting your programs, your college, your student
Yeah.
life, your student activities, all in one little video. And it just becomes this incredible tool that you can use across the board for web, social, digital. You can take that person and put them on the billboard, send them to the video to watch and learn more about it. It's just a really good tool. And I think if that's one thing I wanted to leave everyone with is the fact that let them tell their story. It's going to be better than a
Yes.
scripted video that you're probably going to tune out of when you're wanting to learn about the college or institution. You know? Yeah.
Love it, love it. So as we, look to close out our conversation, but certainly you're always welcome into the Workforce Insight
Yeah.
podcast. I want you to pull out your crystal ball, and thinking about, what's on the horizon, emerging trends. I know for one thing that comes to mind, AI
Yeah.
and even Chat
Yeah.
GPT and marketing and communications. How has that, invaded your space now? What does that
AI,
look like?
absolutely. And you took the words out of my mouth. I think it's all about AI and how you really embrace that moving forward. And we've really embraced that from its core. I've got a few items to talk about here for AI specifically, and it's really important to understand that it's not just Chat GPT. There's other things that have now been introduced in the marketing world that you can take advantage of. And one of our most successful tools that we used over the past 3 years is a service called Carnegie Clarity. It's called Clarity.
Ah,
So what that is, it's basically an AI tool for website personalization. So let's
uh-huh.
say a student wants to go into a nursing program. They've seen an ad, they've clicked an ad, they've visited the nursing program page 3 to 4 times, or maybe they've indicated in a form that nursing was one of their programs of interest. So what happens with the website personalization is once they come back to your institution webpage, they get served up custom content for nursing. So they no longer
Wow.
see your standard page with the news stories.
No
Yeah, it's so
way.
awesome. And what it does is AI in the background, it works its magic. It curates videos, curates stories that's been written about nursing. It curates information from the nursing page itself, and it serves it up on the homepage along with reminders about deadlines for applications, financial aid information, open houses, and so forth. And after the initial setup, it's on autopilot. It's amazing. And it works for every page across your website. It's so cool. And
Oh my
yeah.
goodness. I know that as we share this out and with the marketing, I know that individuals will be
Yeah.
taking notes, and I'm going to encourage them, take notes
Yeah.
while you're listening to it because you've dropped so many great nuggets. And what else were you thinking about with these emerging
Yeah, so another
trends?
one which has actually been around for a while, which we actually used Kim at TCC, was merit pages. This is a
Oh, yes.
student-focused AI tool, which is really amazing to use, and it's a low-cost entry point into this kind of service. And what this is more on the communication sides of the house. So your communications team, it kind of takes some workload off of that team as well. But essentially, I want to call it almost like a LinkedIn for every student at your institution. So it captures all their honors, their awards, if they've made the dean's list or president's list. And one example of how that works from an AI perspective is that let's say they've made the president's list or dean's list at graduation or commencement. So we're able to take a simple Excel sheet from a registrar's office, upload that to Merit Pages. So that could be 200 or 2,000 students, and you load it into Merit Pages, and it generates individualized press releases for every single student on
Yeah.
that list. all in the background, all AI. You're able to review, tweak it if you need to, and then it sends it out to their hometown media on your behalf. So, and it's so cool. So whether they're 5 miles from campus or whether they came 600 miles from campus, it bases it
Yeah.
on their zip code when they registered for their courses or their programs, and it then blasts it out to their hometown media and also the legislators in that general area as well. So you're
Yes.
getting people that are retweeting it, they're reposting it from different cities across the country. So you're getting your word out about your institution. They feel great about themselves making their local press, and it just generates more traffic back to your social, back to your web page. And that's another really great tool. And you mentioned Chat GPT. We've been using it. It's a great baseline. We use it to help us generate ideas to brainstorm for copy, for publications, for social media posts, even for press releases. It really serves up a really solid foundation for content. And our comms team has used that. Our social media team has used it. We've used it for paid marketing if we're trying to come up with a quick tagline for an ad that's going to go out next week. Just a really important tool to take advantage of, I think, from a writing perspective. And AI, I think, is definitely where it's going to head fully and wholly over the next couple of years or so. And don't want to leave the designers out because there's also Canva AI. This is a great way to lock down your brand, but also allow stakeholders across the university or college to take advantage of easy to use tools for generating social media posts, flyers, brochures, and it's AI generated. You load up your colors, you load up your
Wow.
fonts, you load up your logos, and AI helps them generate this content to use immediately. And it's branded, cohesive, and clear. So there's so many great tools out there.
So I love hearing this because for a lot of people, they're balancing,
Yeah.
hey, this is scary and this is going to replace jobs. And I know that you and I share that entrepreneurial,
Yeah.
let's, next stage
Yeah.
mindset, or on even on innovation, that it doesn't. It allows you to do more. It's
Exactly.
focused, and it improves efficiency and the ability to cover so much ground. So I'm so glad that you have identified as your trends, and I'm hopeful that everyone that's listening will embrace that and see that there's so many
Yeah,
opportunities.
that's absolutely the idea of AI. I think it's more of an extension of your team. It's more of an efficiency builder because as everyone knows that's listening, you could have two people on your team or 22 people on your team, and that's it's never enough because there's so many requests.
Yeah.
And I think to identify those tools that really work for you, work harder for you to develop DIY tools for your stakeholders, it just becomes an extension of your team and allows you to be more efficient, more focused on the brand work, the bigger picture ideas and strategies. So fully behind AI tools and how to better make use of those. So
So, again, an amazing conversation, well worth every bit of just reaching out and making sure that you were our top speaker when it comes to marketing communication. And I'm certain that everyone will agree. One question before
yeah.
we leave the podcast, and that is, your playbook. You have, I know it's probably filled with lots of things. I'm not even sure how you carry that playbook these days because it's just so big. But thinking about community
Mhm.
colleges and universities, what would be that playbook tip? And we talk about inspiring leaders as well. So, what would you want to share? It could be from the vantage point of someone that's just getting into this role, or maybe even a seasoned veteran that says, okay, what can you share with me? So, what would
I
be those
mean, this is
nuggets?
taking us out of our realm, what we've been talking about, but relationship building. I mean, that has been a key playbook that I've had over the past several years. And, going into an institution, being proactive and intentional in how you build relationships is so important in marketing communications because you're going to rely on those relationships when you're launching a new brand. If you're doing a website
Yeah.
overhaul, if you're trying to condense social media channels from 1,000 to 10, you have to have relationships in place and you have to be proactive and intentional about that. And that's not just for the leader. I've told my
Right.
staff that, a lot of times they look to me or the chief marketing officer or whoever to be their advocate. I said, no, you're all advocates for this team. So you have to be
Yeah.
proactive. You have to go out there and meet with individuals, talk about what you're doing, what our plan is, what our strategy is, and really it's an educational experience for both sides of the house to get out there and talk with individuals. we've set up what we call UCM beats, University Communications and Marketing beats, where we really identify 2 to 3 different units across the university, and they're connected with a person on our team. So you could have your social media manager reaching out to legal, to nursing, to
Yeah.
athletics, and it's a 15-minute touch point biweekly. It's just a, hey, how are you doing? How are things going? Here's what we're doing. How can we leverage each other's resources to, one, tell a story, to get the word out about something important, but it's a really intentional way to build relationships, communicate, and make sure that you're getting the buy-in and that trust from across the university. So many ways to do that, but I think, one tip in the playbook is when you get in there to a new position, meet as many people as you can. I think your first 90 days is truly listening. It's listening and learning, talking to people, and then formulating your strategy from there. Yeah.
I love it. Again, it's such a wonderful opportunity to connect with you, to even reflect on the work that we did together, and to know that you've just continued that record pace and of just building brands, and doing that through collaboration. That's exactly who you are. So thank you for everyone tuning in to the Workforce Insight podcast powered by Envision More Consulting Group, where we bring your bold visions to life. And we are just thankful. And Travis, know that, the door is always open for you to come back, because we want to stay close, because we understand that you are the storyteller and you do it like no other. So thank you very much
Thank
for
you so
joining
much,
us.
Karen, for this opportunity. It's been fantastic.
Thanks for tuning in to the Workforce Insight podcast, powered by Envision More Consulting Group, where we bring your bold visions to life. Remember to subscribe, share, and stay tuned for more insights on navigating the world of workforce and leadership. Until the next time, be bold, be great, and let's innovate.